Good afternoon. My name is Amanda Copley Acker. Um, get my presentation up here. I'm doing my presentation on a Prezi because that's my newfound love. I think they're awesome. Also, in advance, I'd like to go ahead and apologize if you can hear Mickey Mouse really loudly in the background. Currently keeping my toddler entertained, hopefully through the duration of this video. He's not been feeling well, so I've been putting it off, and well, it's the last minute, so I'm going to try to get through it. And if the dog starts barking, I'm so sorry. Hopefully we won't have any interruptions. I done my presentation on autism spectrum disorder, or ASD. What is ASD? IDEA defines ASD as a developmental disability which significantly affects verbal and nonverbal communication and social interaction, generally evident before the age of 3, that adversely affects the child's educational performance. That being said, while I was doing the research, I also found that a lot of times parents don't necessarily notice the signs before the age of 3, and that's why a lot of the times they're not diagnosed till they're older, 4 or 5 range. Just a tidbit there. Causes and characteristics. Causes of ASD. It's a genetically based disability. It has unknown cause. It's an unknown cause of gene mutation of the de novo gene. It leads to neurological system development and functioning differently. And it interferes with social development. A lot of times children with ASD aren't necessarily social with other people and seem more interested in objects. Communication characteristics. They have different kinds of communication patterns. They like eye contact. Some fail to develop spoken language. Usually this is the more severe of the spectrum disorder. And when they lack that development, they tend to do more like hand gestures to communicate, and sometimes repetition of others' oral speech. They may have difficulty trying to express themselves through verbal communication, so they'll resort back to the hand gestures. Socialization characteristics. They have difficulty socializing with others. As I mentioned before, they may not be cuddly and resist being held. I know that's one of the signs that our pediatrician told us to look for. They may appear oblivious to other people's feelings. They may not acknowledge the presence of others. They may stay to themselves. They like to play by themselves, and like I said earlier, more interested in objects than they are other people and social interaction. They may display what we would consider inappropriate emotions, and difficulty understanding other people and their emotions, and developing reciprocal relationships. Interest characteristics. They're more interested in objects than people, as I mentioned. Most show inappropriate fear. Extremely narrow range of interests. They may just focus in on one thing that they really like. I met this one little boy, and his favorite thing was airplanes, and he just loved everything to do with airplanes. His room had to be done in airplanes. His clothes had to have airplanes on them. And he just, anything that was airplane related, he would focus in on it, and that was when you could really get his attention and actually get him to interact with you. Anyway, back to the PowerPoint. They may focus in areas such as the narrow range of interest, and be repetitive. The assessment and diagnosis. Evaluation. They start with parental interviews, behavioral observation, health history, evaluation of skills, documentation on how it affects the schools or the child's performance in school. The teacher obviously will do the documentation in the classroom. And parents, a lot of times they know their child the best, so they'll see it, even if they don't necessarily know that it's a sign or a sign of autism. They still know that that's what their child does, so they're really good at helping in the diagnosis. Evaluation participants. The people who sit in on the evaluation is the parents, the general education teacher, a licensed school psychologist, a licensed medical provider that cares for them, a certified speech and language teacher or specialist if available, and other professional personnel that works with them, such as they see if they have any other receive any other help, then those people would also sit in during the evaluation. I wanted to, I got this off of the Tennessee Disability Handbook page. It's the assessment documentation. I just thought it would be interesting to go ahead and add that in here, so we can kind of see what they're looking for. Two major problems with the diagnosing of autism is the criteria for the communication category isn't even prevalent until the child has developed language, so it prolongs the diagnosing of the disorder. And also the classification type is subjective. A lot of professionals may see the signs one way and another one see it differently. Autism in the classroom. Sorry, my kid was crying. I was hoping his daddy would get him. Anyway, back to the presentation. Autism in the classroom. Like all students with autism are unique. They will have unique needs in the classroom. They may have unusual learning styles or difficulty adjusting to change, trouble interacting with their peers. Their peers may have difficulty understanding them. Like I mentioned before, their social interactions are not very good, especially on the more severe side. They could be possibly disruptive and easily distracted. Some accommodations and adjustments that I found was the use of concrete visual teaching strategies. And I went ahead and threw some images of some that I found that I liked. I just thought they were cute, especially the 5-finger retail that lays it out. And this is a good hands-on strategy also. Support language with visual cues. Children with autism, I mentioned before, sometimes have difficulty developing their language with the cards. I like the cards that kind of showed them symbols along with the word and what they were supposed to do. And I like this simple using different kind of visual cues to let them know what the word is or what they're supposed to be doing. They may need more personal space, and like I mentioned before, they don't really like to be close to other people. They'd rather be by themselves a lot of the times, and it's not, it's just a personal boundary thing. But I like the idea of having a little card that would let people know, today you can set this close, or that's too close. And I feel like that's a good visual representation of how the child feels. And also I included the little calm down spot because I feel like it's very important to for children, especially children with autism, to have a spot that they can remove themselves from the class or what's going on, and just have a spot where they can calm down and regroup. Here's to incorporate their strengths and their interests. As I mentioned before, sometimes they become fixated on certain items or certain things, and it's very important to use that to your advantage. I mentioned the little boy who really liked airplanes, and I could use that as a way to get him to socialize with me, because he really, really liked airplanes. If I'd bring an airplane around or we'd play a game with airplanes, then he was more active in socializing with me versus other times when he wouldn't pay me much attention at all. But it's really important in the classroom that you keep that in mind. And I like these little charts, inventories of how to figure out and get to know your children better each year. The physical layout, it should be a structural classroom environment, both in the physical layout. It should have predictable routines and predictable daily schedules. I really liked this classroom style because it was very, everything was labeled and put up and neat and organized in the right spot, and they then used a lot of visual cues. And then the morning schedule, I like it being laid out and simple, and this is what we're going to do, and then we're going to do this, and then we're going to do that. Oops, sorry. And then this chart, I just liked how this is who is with who and with who, and it's a very good visual representation, especially for autistic children who are visual learners. Back there, see, special sensory needs. Sometimes children with autism have difficulty with light, or even other children that might have difficulty with light. I like the idea of putting the bag and kind of blocking out some of the harsh classroom lights and the comfortable seating. And this little kid has on the headphones. Sometimes autistic children can become overwhelmed and distracted, and I feel like the headphones would give them a good central spot and kind of block out some of the extra that they might not need, and kind of help them in that area. Some research that I done on effective teaching strategies for children with autism. Bailey Pagatodia, yeah, messed that one up. In 2015, completed a literature review of 51 articles. Some of them dated back to like 1977, all the way to current years. But they covered 5 interventions for children with autism. Applied behavioral analysis, or ABA. This targets specific skills. The goal of this one is to alter the behavior, and they do this through positive reinforcement and prompting. It teaches social, verbal, and motor behaviors. The next one is treatment and education for autistic and related communication handicapped children, or TEACH, CC. And this one builds on the child's strengths to make them successful. So it's very child-centered, and it's focusing, like I said, on their interests and their strengths. It's structured. It has a structured training on social, living, leisure, and communication skills. The 4 major components, which I'm sure you would remember from before: very organized physical environment, predictable activities, visual schedules, and a structured work requirement. And it's focused on forming partnerships between the parents and the professionals. So I like that one about this one. And the next one is learning experiences, the alternative program, or LEAP. This one focuses on 3 to 5-year-old preschool, and it's a preschool program. It was a demonstration program, so basically they worked with the children and demonstrated appropriate interactions. It was inclusive. All the children in the classroom were all together. The activities were developmentally appropriate, and this activity was a lot more cost effective. It actually, I believe, cut the cost from the other two in half to do this program. The Denver Health Science Center program, or DHSCP. This one focuses on the use of play. It's based on Piaget's theory and not so much of the behavioral like all the rest of them have been. It has interpersonal relationships, pragmatic classroom structure and routines, techniques to facilitate symbolic thoughts, and it was developmentally oriented, so they focused on developmentally appropriate practices also, but the use of play was the big one there. I really liked it, this one. The Early Start Denver model, or ESDM. Let's got those slides mixed up. There we go. It addresses the needs of toddlers with ASD and their families for parent involvement and intense intervention. It's manualized, comprehensive early behavior intervention for toddlers in preschool age. It's delivered by trained therapists and parents, provided in the toddler's natural environment. So they'll do this at home. It's not occurring in the classroom necessarily, but also at home, somewhere where the child feels comfortable. And it focuses on their individual strengths and weaknesses and developmental domains such as joint attention, play, social orientation, imitation, attention, and verbal and nonverbal communication. Okay, now the significant thing about this research is the researcher found that all of these strategies had positive results and significant difference, but none were deemed better than the other ones. Thus, it was concluded that the use of the combination of all the strategies would yield positive and effective results in the classroom. Here's a nice little quote that I found that I really liked. Every child has a different learning style and pace. Each child is unique, not only capable of learning, but also capable of succeeding. So that's very important to keep in mind as we go forward. Autism personal stories. Here's where I got into my interview. I will go ahead and click through it. I did put each of the interview questions on here. I don't want to sit and read off all of them. I might focus on a few of them. I felt like they were very important to include them all. The teacher that I have, I chose her because she, I knew her personally because I had her in school. But she's also been a teacher for almost 30 years. But her son is also autistic, and or has autism, a better way to put that. So it makes her inside of it especially unique. So I really wanted to see how she felt about it. Let's see. I'll give you a second to read through these before I click on. Overall, the teacher was very positive about her environment and working with each other and teaching the student to build on their strengths and focusing on them. Here's what changes have you made through your teaching since working with students with disabilities. Her main thing was that all students are different. If you have a child with autism, then you have just that one child with autism, because each autistic child is different and has different strengths and weaknesses. And I really liked her putting that in there, and focusing on the fact that it's very important as teachers we get to know each one of our students. She had done thousands of IEPs. she said she has difficulty with state testing and regulations, which I think that's probably renowned for most teachers. She talked about a student that she had worked with on their writing who had been unable to write before and then got a 3 on a paragraph that they wrote, and she was so proud. Interaction with families. With her being a high school teacher, she mentioned that she didn't have much interaction with families, but that when she did, she had difficulty with it because a lot of times she wasn't having that interaction until there was a problem, and then she was having to tell them something was wrong, and she didn't really like doing that. So, strategies. She said she tried to incorporate multiple strategies into her classroom. Different levels of RTI. She says it's very challenging and each day is different. That kind of caught me off guard that she's been a teacher for almost 30 years and she still has difficulty in the classroom and speaks of how different each year is. I really liked her advice for the teacher to focus on the students and try not to forget it, or to try to forget about testing. The test scores and evaluation scores are not your worth as a person or as a teacher. The students and their everyday growth are the important things. She also mentioned the lack of resources in this town for children with autism. So later on I'll talk more about that, but that was one of her other main points. And this parent, I spoke to several different parents while doing this project. I even asked several to participate in the interview process. I chose this parent because her view was so much different than the teacher. The teacher was positive and very uplifting and had, hope. This, I guess, that's what I put it. This parent was a little more down on it and had a lot more of a negative opinion when it comes to the school system. Her son had just moved to a different school and was having a lot of trouble with the new school, but both were in a small town and she felt like she didn't have the resources. She's a mother of 3, recently remarried. She said that the baby, the little boy she felt like he was a normal little baby that didn't cry very much, played well, and had no issues. But he started failing to meet his milestones between 16 and 18 months. He had difficulty with zippers and not using 2 words, sentences, and difficulty. Other people couldn't understand what he was saying. He was 5 when he was diagnosed with ADHD, and then at 8 he was diagnosed with Asperger's. She talked about a couple of people that, or the way that they done the diagnosis. She said that they watched him play and talked to him by himself and showed him pictures and videos and asked him questions. She said that she wasn't surprised by the diagnosis because she had been prepared by then. She knew something was wrong with the picture that he wasn't developing typically. She said she had done research and found information about autism on Google. She said that she didn't really have this family support, which I found later on was a big issue. That the father's family basically felt like he was just spoiled and a brat and that he just needed a good spanking, but wasn't supportive of the fact that he just wasn't developing typically. She said she didn't get any early intervention services. Like I say, he wasn't even diagnosed with autism until he was 8. So that was not ethical. She said he had received speech therapy, social skills therapy before he went to high school, and occupational therapy in kindergarten and first grade. She spoke of a few teachers that she felt were very helpful. She said that there's no community agencies that she's found to be helpful. And to be honest, we're both, she's from the town that I'm from. She moved from a smaller town that was right beside of us. While there seems to be more in the bigger cities, our small town don't really offer too much community support. I only found one actual support group that you could go to in town that met once a month. And I'll later talk about that. This broke my heart. It says their experience in school, it says he has been bullied, he's been ignored, he's been brushed aside, and it's been assumed because he is high functioning that he's just a bad kid. He's been left alone so that they didn't have to deal with him. She talks about being from the small town and how they aren't equipped to deal with children, autistic children, and that she wished she had homeschooled him or put him in a private school. She talks about how he used to get to go to Special Olympics in Gatlinburg, and it was a very positive experience for him. Talks about how important it is for the teacher to tell her the good things that her son's doing. Oops, I forgot to mark out that D. Sorry. But anyway, she focuses on that. A lot of times she talked about how a lot of times when she hears from the teacher, it's negative, and it's about the things that he's done wrong. So she really likes when the teacher makes a little note of what he's doing right. A difficult challenge in the community. Living in small counties, they don't have the resources or the knowledge to help children with autism. And not only, like I said, I found one community program that they could actually, or support group that someone could attend. But as far as the information, it seems to be very limited. And I don't believe that it's taught in schools. Like she mentioned, he's very high functioning, so it could be easily mistaken as a child that's just, for lack of better terms, not good, or being bad, or acting out, or anyway. Speaks of how every day in his life is difficult for him, and how the move and throwing him out of his routine really threw him off because he had formed friends there. He'd been in the same school from, I think he was 16 when he moved, so from kindergarten to 16, and then he gets up here and the children don't know him. They don't know anything about him, so he's being bullied, and likely misunderstood, and she feels like she's being ignored as a parent, that the school's not taking her seriously and they're not listening to her. Some goals and dreams. I want the same thing every parent wants for their child. I want him to be as successful as he can be and to be happy. So that just shows that all parents feel the same way. They want what's best for their children. So she's a little, pessimistic here. She doesn't know what she needs to do because the move caused such a huge change for him, and he's having such a rough time right now. She doesn't know how to help him. And I really liked her advice for her new teacher. Don't be afraid to ask me questions. Listen to what I tell you. Don't brush off my advice because I don't have the same college degree as you. I am his mama. I know the signs of an impending meltdown and how to diffuse it. Be patient with him. Talk to him about things he likes, and he will open up to you. Don't corner him and make him feel like you're attacking him. He will go into defense mode. Do not single him out and embarrass him. Do not give him a long list of instructions. Simple 1 or 2 steps at a time, or he will feel overwhelmed and you will not get the desired results. I really like that because she focuses on the importance of communicating with the parent and what kind of impact the parent can have and the advice that they can give. I feel like a lot of times, we do go to school, we do have training in it, but they're the parents, and they're going to know more about their child. They're going to know what they like. They're going to know how to help them. So it's very important that we build a collaboration with them and work together and not against each other. There's the interview. Here's some of the resources I was talking about. Like I said, there is one group, and it's called Special Parents of Exceptional Children. And it's for parents with children of that have any kind of disability. And they meet each Monday, 6 to 8 during the school year. So it's once a month for 2 hours that this support group lasts. Excuse me. And then I also found that we have an annual autism run or walk that they put on. I don't know if it's actually annual because I think the last one I seen was a couple years ago, but it was supposed to be annual. Maybe they'll pick that back up. I did find several online. There's so many online, but I put a few of my favorites on here. AutismSpeaks.org, they offer a support toolkit for families. You can specify how you're related to the child. It could be grandparents, the parents, siblings, and it just gives you some information on what autism is and how to deal with it into your daily life and how to support the individual with autism. And I really like that. And then AutismSociety.org, I found that they had a lot of information on what autism is. And it's a lot of information. They provide a lot of resources for families. And Facebook, there's a Autism Mom Support Group on Facebook. I feel like the social media support group would be really helpful, especially for individuals in a small town where there's not necessarily that support that they might need. So I really like that there was the online one. The reason I find support so important, I found this research that was done by Jones and Passy, and it examined the importance of providing resources to families with children with special needs. They found that families have a difficult time locating the resources. They're not really put out there. You might get a pamphlet. Like I said, there was the one support group here. I'd say it might be different for bigger cities, but we're just a little small one, and there's really not much. But what information they did receive, they had difficulty understanding it. And, doctors don't necessarily have the time to sit down and explain every little thing to you. So I feel like it'd be vital for these families to have that kind of support group where they could gain that kind of information. They also found that the recommendations for the parents were inconsistent from doctor to doctor. A lot of times the parent will go in for a second opinion, and the doctor would have a completely different idea. And that's not necessarily uncommon, especially for autism. Like I mentioned before, it's very subjective to the person that you're talking to on how they're interpreting the child's behavior. The families with children with autism had found simple tasks to become more stressful, and they had higher anxiety and difficulty adjusting, and they feel a lack of support. They don't have that family support. A lot of times, like mentioned by the lady who participated in my interview. Her family didn't understand what autism was, and she just thought her kid, or they thought her kid was just being a brat. And a lot of times I get that, especially with the higher functioning ones, or children. Individuals, they don't know exactly what's going on, so they make assumptions based on lack of information, I suppose. And they're not very supportive, and they don't really try to understand the child's situation. My reflection, let's see, I learned a lot from the chapter, so going into this, I was already aware that I needed to be accommodating for these students. I realized that they needed a safe place to regroup, and that the diagnosis was subjective, and that the disability was very common, and that we were very likely to encounter it in our future classrooms. Some new things that I learned while doing this project, with the interviews, the teacher, I really liked her ideas and her insight. I really liked that she seemed hopeful and positive, and like every day is a new day. And this, like I said, is coming from a mother of a child that has autism also. So she realizes that even if you have had autistic children in your classroom, each autistic child is different, just like each child is different. So each year you need to get to know each child in your classroom, and that is very important. And from the parent, although, like I said, she was obviously going through a rough time with the move, and it's a little more on the negative side, but she was really focused on the needing of more resources and understanding, which the teacher also mentioned that too. But the parent really focused on it because their child was being bullied. The students didn't understand what was going on, and the teachers didn't understand him, especially since he was high functioning. And the fact that it's very important to incorporate the family into your classrooms. And the research, it taught me that there was different types of strategies that could be used, and the importance of utilizing multiple ones in the classroom, and also the importance of providing resources for families with children with disabilities. Like I mentioned, a lot of the times, even simple tasks that we take, for granted, like getting up and getting our kids dressed, which given some days is rough on me, but with a child with autism can be extremely stressful. And the lack of understanding from the community would make that even worse. And I think it's very important that we try to reach out to these parents and to help these parents and to increase the understanding of the disorder. Some ways I plan to use it in my classroom. I plan to keep an open mind about my students, and to be understanding that each one of them is an individual, and to get to know each one of them as an individual, so that way I can incorporate who they are into the classroom and try to play on their strengths. I want to include parents into the classroom in a respectful manner. I want them to understand that they are considered a partner in my classroom, and that I do value their opinions. I like the idea of using a procedure chart, so that way you have a visual representation of what you're going to do for the day. And I like clearly posting class expectations. I feel like that's very beneficial for all students as a reminder, of how they're expected to be in the classroom. And I also feel like it helps create the structured environment that children need to learn, especially children with autism. I like the idea of giving students a checklist so that way they have something physical that they can mark off and look at. And consistent daily activities. Like the idea of using the daily routine, and at this time it's snack time, this time it's math time, this time is reading time, this time is free play time, but having it mapped out for them so that way they know what to expect. And using as many visuals as possible to aid to those visual learners and people who benefit from that. Being sure to incorporate a home base for recomposing themselves in the classroom. I feel like that's very beneficial for all the students. I feel like they all will have times where they feel overwhelmed and just need time to cool off and recompose and get back to a calm state of mind so that they can go back to learning. And giving students options of seating. I realize that there needs to be some kind of assigned seating, but also like the idea of the student being able to voice their concerns about being able to see the board, or wanting more space, or less light, or wanting a specific area in the room and trying to accommodate for those needs. And also using alternative lighting options for those students that need it. Here are my references. And that's it. That is my presentation. Thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed this semester, and I really enjoyed doing this project, and hopefully this works out and I can get it sent to you and everything's good to go. I hope. Thank you very much.